Well, I want to talk about it in the PSSR video, and I can't really talk about it here because the idea was like address it like, yeah, there's this noise in the game, but guess what? It's not PSSR this time. Without I was more focused on this PSSR 2 stuff. So I was like, all right, well, I want to talk about it in the PSSR video, and I can't really talk about it here because the idea was like address it like, yeah, there's this noise in the game, but guess what? It's not PSSR this time. Without thinking like that doesn't mean the noise isn't still a problem. In my mind, I was more focused on this PSSR 2 stuff. So I was like, all right, well, I want to talk about it in the PSSR video, and I can't really talk about it here because the idea was like address it like, yeah, there's this noise in the game, but guess what? It's not PSSR this time. Without thinking like that doesn't mean the noise isn't still a problem, right? It was more like shifting where the source of the problem was. And so that's why I wanted to put it in there. And it just kind of, all of this just created a situation where things were in flux a lot. Like my video originally did not, like I said, it had no platform comparison to it at all.
So, yeah, I think there might have been some confusion in there because you were in your social media talking about embargoes being the reason why we delayed the video. And the reason we delayed the video was because your the amount of footage you had.
My pro version, it has 2 modes. That's right. In the options, I was more focused on this PSSR 2 stuff. So I was like, all right, well, in terms of making it look appealing. And by taking that away, they did get rid of the noise, but it just looks in the shadows because it's a very gray, monochromatic place, right? And the RTGI I felt was very important in terms of making it look appealing. And by taking that away, they did get rid of the noise, but it just
got rid of the RT.
It just looks so flat now. I think I just don't like how that area looks without the RTGI. And so I guess my confusion here is like why they decided to get rid of it entirely as opposed to like making it like an option. I think the better solution here would have been to have an option when you turn off ray tracing to run at 60 hertz with PSSR.
Find your perfect tax expert. Whatever your tax situation might be.
Okay.
Because right now, if you did the ray tracing off, it does the 120 mode, although you can force, I guess, 60 hertz like Oliver did, but that runs without PSSR, which looks a lot worse. There was no middle option, basically, for the good image quality, but without the RT stuff. And now they just kind of compromised it, so like parts of the game just totally lack RT. I don't think this is the best solution. I think it was done just to like sort of like address those complaints. And it's probably the fastest thing they could have done. Because again, obviously, if their denoiser has major issues, but you can't just solve that in a week. It's not that easy, right? This is a difficult problem to solve. So I'm not really sure where they go from here. I think they should restore it, but make it optional. But again, that requires UI adjustments, and there's a lot to deal with there. So it's a tricky situation.
Is the ray tracing mode available if you don't have a 120 hertz? Sorry, is the non-ray tracing, the performance mode, available if you have if you don't have a 120 hertz screen?
Yes, it is. But it still runs without PSSR. Although I didn't check it after this latest patch, but before it definitely did not. No matter what you did, it was still running with just like normal upscaling, like PSSR1 stuff.
So the point I'm trying to make is that effectively there is already a mode to turn off ray tracing if you don't like the effect. It's just that you don't get PSSR2.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, it's not ideal, is it? I think ultimately, if you don't, I mean, there are ways with ray tracing always, but if people don't particularly like the effect, turn it off. That seems to be the most obvious thing to me. Make it a user selectable choice. If that user selectable choice does also downgrade the image quality, however, that's not great. But
make PSSR an option. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Oliver?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that mode. I counted it out at about 1296p, the mode at 60 hertz with PSSR off and ray tracing off when you turn that RT toggle off. And 1296p, I think, is considerably above the PlayStation 5's resolution, which is closer to 1080p, if I'm right there, John. A little bit above 1080p.
Yeah, just above 1080p, so it's slightly higher.
There is actually an enhancement there. Now, I certainly would not take that enhancement over just having PSSR, and certainly if the GPU time is there for PSSR to 4K output with ray tracing, certainly it would be there without the ray tracing, you'd presume. So that seems like a more obvious option to me for people who are uncomfortable and disappointed with the ray tracing presentation in Raccoon City. But myself, I'm not particularly bothered by ray tracing noise because in some cases, it's kind of nice to have a bit of RT noise because it lets you know, hey, you're dealing with real uncomfortable and disappointed with the ray tracing presentation in Raccoon City. But myself, I'm not particularly bothered by ray tracing noise because in some cases, it's kind of nice to have a bit of RT noise because it lets you know, hey, you're dealing with real God-fearing ray tracing here. You're not dealing with some big lighting technique that looks perfectly stable, some probes or some light maps that you can't really tell that it's being done in real time because it's not being done in real time. I would hope that they would bring this back after some tweaking, hopefully after some improvements to their denoiser, which would be appreciated across all platforms here. My worry, though, is that they won't because of the user backlash. But I did actually see some footage of the game before this update operating in Raccoon City with that ray tracing enabled, with PSSR enabled and ray tracing enabled. And it did not look too handsome. It looked
in terms of making it look appealing. And by taking that away, they did get rid of the noise, but it just
They got
looks
rid
in the shadows because it's a very gray